Hey there, Algebra 2 students. Welcome back to Miss McGuire's classroom. So today we're going to be doing our last lesson of Unit 5, which is exciting and stressful at the same time because that means next week we have our unit test, but it's okay because y'all are going to do great. So today's lesson is focused on graphing rational functions. Don't forget to put your first and last name, period, and the date in the upper right-hand corner. And let's jump in. So your objective today is I will graph rational equations and identify points where the function is undefined. Mastery will be demonstrated by scoring at least 80% on the extra practice. So the easiest way to explain this stuff is through working out an example. So I'm going to talk about like the key components of graphing a rational function while we work through example 1, part A. So for part A, we have f of x is equal to x squared minus x all over x. Now, this equation might look scary at first because, oh no, how do I graph a fraction with a bunch of variables in it? But something really nice is about to happen. Let me show you your very first step. So step 1, factor as much as you can. So step 1, factor. So we have f of x is equal to x squared minus x has a GCF of x. And if I factor that out, I'm left with x minus 1. And I can check that because x times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is negative x. Now, something really nice is about to happen. Step 2, simplify your equation. So check this out. What is x divided by x? 1. And what is 1 times x minus 1? Well, that's just x minus 1. We're left with a function that is f of x equals x minus 1. Now, it's no longer a fraction, and we know how to graph this. It's a degree 1 polynomial, which means it's linear. It's in slope-intercept form. Remember, y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. I'm just going to remind myself over here where b is the y-intercept, m is the slope. So now we are going to graph. So step 3. Graph it. So my y-intercept is negative 1. My slope is, technically there's a 1 right here. I guess I should have identified that. M is equal to 1 and our y-intercept is 0, negative 1. Remember the x value of every y-intercept ever is always 0. Then for my slope, I'm going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1 for a while here. Okay. Now, before I draw in my line, I have to do one last step. So step 4, find the undefined point. And let me explain what that undefined point is in just a second. So the undefined point occurs where we have any restrictions on our variable. So remember with rational equations, rational expressions, we always have restrictions because our denominator can never be equal to 0. So we originally had an x in our denominator. Well, that restriction is at x can't be 0 because if I plug in 0 for x right here, I would have x squared minus x. Well, sorry, hang on. If I plug in 0, I get 0 squared minus 0 over 0. And I'm not allowed to have 0 in my denominator. That's undefined. So this creates a point that is actually undefined and not included on our graph. So to find where that point is, we take x equals 0 and we plug it into our simplified function. So we're going to take f of 0 equals x, we're going to take f of x equals x minus 1, and we're going to plug in 0. So f of 0 is equal to 0 minus 1. And we get negative 1. So that means that we have an undefined point And in your notes, in your paper, like on your paper, you need to have the word undefined written next to this point. I'm going to look for that word in your work on our test on Friday of next week, or Thursday or Friday next week, sorry, whichever day you take the test. I'm going to look for this word in your work. I'm going to look for this word in any work that you submit for graphing these problems. So you want to label the point undefined. The X value we used was 0. The Y value we got was -1. So at 0, -1, we have an undefined point. So I'm going to go to 0, -1 on my graph, and I'm going to put an open circle. So originally I had just had a closed circle there. So I erased it, and then I put an open circle at 0, -1. That means that our graph includes every single point on this line except for 0, -1, since X can't be 0. So our undefined point is an open circle. And it's an open circle. Remember from last semester, we talked about open circles and closed circles. That means that it's not included in our solution set. So our line includes all of these points and all of these points to the right and to the left of that undefined point. So it's a linear graph. This rational function has the graph of a straight line, it's linear, with an open circle at the point where the function is undefined. All right, so let's do example 1, part B. I'm going to walk you through the steps and then ask you some questions as we go. So remember, step 1 is to factor everything that you can. So f of x is equal to, you're going to have a GCF that you can factor out. So go ahead and do step 1. Factor that numerator. Go ahead and give it a shot. So you should have gotten f of x equals -3x times x minus 4 over 6x. So I know that's right because -3x times x is -3x squared. -3x times -4 is positive 12x. Now you're going to simplify what you can. So go ahead and simplify this as much as possible. So step 2, simplify. Let's see what you get. So this simplified to -x minus 4 over 2. So what we can do from here is when we get to our third step, which is to graph, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this as, this is technically -1 over 2 times x minus 4. And we can actually rewrite that as, I'm going to do f of x equals -1/2x. Sorry, my puppy, of course, you know, saw a bad guy or someone out on the street and had to bark at them. So here we are. So I can rewrite this as -1/2 times x minus 4. This is the same thing as this. So now, in order to get it into slope-intercept form, I'm going to distribute the -1/2. I get -1/2 x. -1/2 times -4 is positive 2. So my slope is -1/2, and my y-intercept is the 0.02. Oh, I should have made you do that on your own. Guess I did it for you, huh? All right, so go ahead and graph your line. And then I want you to see if you can find the undefined point on your own. So you're going to do step 4. You're going to find that undefined point. On your own, see if you can figure it out. All right. So I've started the graphing of my line. I put my y-intercept at 0, 2. I went down 1 over 2 for my slope, but I need to find my undefined point before I actually draw the line in. So to find that, I need to look back at my restrictions. What is x not allowed to be? Well, if I look at my denominator here, 6x, for 6x to equal 0, I would get x equals 0. So that means x is not allowed to be 0. So I'm going to use the x value of 0 and plug it into my simplified equation. Because if I plug it into the original rational expression, I'm going to get undefined. So that's not helpful. But if I plug it into the simplified one, I will get an x value. So we can use either simplified expression. We can use the one from step 2 or the one from step 3, whichever one we want. I'm going to plug it into the one from step 2 just for fun. So f of 0 would look like -1 times 0 minus 4 divided by 2. I would get -1 times -4 over 2. And I would get -1 times -4 is +4 divided by 2 is 2. So I have an undefined point at 0, 2. Remember, I'm looking for the label of undefined written next to that point in your work. So I'm going to go back to the point 0, 2, and I'm going to draw it as an open circle. Actually, I'll do it in purple since I did my work in purple. I'm going to make that point an open circle. And then the graph of our function includes all of the points to the left and to the right of that point, but it's undefined at 0, 2 because x can't be 0. Right, I feel like you guys are ready to do one on your own now. So go ahead and check out part C, 5x squared plus 8x all over 4x. Follow our steps, factor, simplify, graph, find your undefined point, and finish graphing. Good luck. So hopefully our graphs match. I was able to factor out an x from 5x squared plus 8x, which ended up simplifying. So I had the x over x ended up simplifying. So it was left with 1/4 times 5x plus 8. When I distributed that 1/4 and simplified, I got 5x plus 2. So my slope is 5/4 and my y-intercept is 0, 2. Then I graphed that. So I started at 0, 2, went up 5. Oh, you know what? I just realized a silly mistake. Hey, I found it before I published this video, so that's cool. I should have gone over 4. I only went over 2. I don't know. I was thinking of the y-intercept. That's probably why. We'll blame that. So I should have gone up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Then I found my undefined point, which ended up being at 0, 2. Because of the original function, x can't be 0 in that denominator. So my restriction is at 0. I plugged that in and I got 2 for y, so it's at 0, 2. So I put an open circle at 0, 2, and then I'm going to draw in the rest of my line to include all of the points to the left and right of that undefined point. All right, so let's do a little more complicated ones. Or are they more complicated? All right, so f of x is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 10 all over x minus 5. This might look a little trickier, but we're going to follow the exact same steps to graph these rational functions as well. So we're going to factor what we can. That's always our first step. So for x squared minus 3x minus 10, x times x is x squared. The factors of 10 are 1 and 10, 2 and 5. The factors that'll get me -3x are 2 and 5. So I'm going to put a 2 and a 5. I need -3x when I add these. So I want -5 plus 2. Then, oh, look at that. We have x minus 5 in the numerator and the denominator. Well, x minus 5 divided by itself is 1. And 1 times x plus 2 is just x plus 2. So check it out. We just have x plus 2. Again, we have a linear function, which we know how to graph. So all these steps so far are pretty much the same. Our slope then is 1. Our y-intercept is 0, 2. So I'm going to plot the points 0, 2. I'm going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. I can also go down 1 over 1 just to find some more points when I draw my line. It's easier to draw your line if you have a bunch of points to go through to like guide the shape of your line, right? So then to find the undefined point, this is where things are going to change a little bit, because for example 1, our undefined point was always using x equals 0. But this time to find our undefined point, what would make x minus 5 0? This time x can't be 5. So now we're going to take our simplified function again, and we're going to find f of 5. Well, our simplified function was f of x equals x plus 2. So we're going to plug in 5, and we get 7. So the point 5, 7 is not included in the function's graph. So we need to find 5, 7, which is right here. I'm going to erase it because I had already had it on my graph. And I'm going to put an open circle at 5, 7. So our function's graph includes all of the points to the left and right of 5, 7. But the point 5, 7 itself is actually undefined. And there we go. All right, part B, 7x squared minus 11x minus 6 all over x minus 2. So now we need to graph this function. So again, you're going to factor what you can, simplify, and then graph your linear function. Go ahead and factor that numerator on your own. So when I factored this, I got x minus 2 times 7x plus 3 in my numerator. Then we're going to simplify what we can, and we're left with 7x plus 3 equals f of x. Identify your slope, identify your y-intercept, graph the line, but before you draw the line through all your points, find your undefined point. So I actually want you to finish this as much as you can on your own. Find your undefined point, identify what x is not allowed to be, plug that back into your simplified function to find your y value, and then go ahead and finish graphing this. See what you can do. So I actually realized that my graph wasn't going to go high enough because of our undefined point. So I relabeled my y-axis and counted by 2s. And I found my undefined point was going to be at 217. So I plotted that. My y-intercept was 0, 3. I went up 7 over 1 for my slope, down 7 over 1 for my slope, and then drew in my line around that undefined point. So hopefully our graphs match. And if you didn't relabel your y-axis, then your point 217 was probably like up here off of your graph, which is okay. Okay, so, oh, and just to mention, I got 2 for I used 2 for my x value for my undefined point, because if you look at the original function, x is not allowed to be 2 in that denominator. So now I want you to try example 2 part C all by yourself. Do the entire thing. Factor it, simplify it, graph your line, find your undefined point, add that to your graph, and fill in the rest of your graph. Good luck. All right, so I factored 2x squared plus 17x plus 21 to 2x plus 3 times x plus 7. Then I saw that x plus 7 divided by itself goes ahead and becomes 1. 1 times 2x plus 3 is just 2x plus 3. That gives me a linear graph with a slope of 2, a y-intercept of 0, 3. So I graphed that. My slope, my y-intercept is 0, 3. I went up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, etc. So I have my line. Then to find my undefined point, I looked at my restrictions. So what is x not allowed to be? So I have x plus 7 in my denominator. Therefore, x cannot be -7. So since x can't be -7, I plugged it into my simplified function of f of x equals 2x plus 3. I replaced x with -7. I got 2 times -7 is -14 plus 3 is -11. So my graph is undefined at the point -7, 11. And since that's like close to fitting on the graph, I didn't think it was worth like relabeling anything. So I just graphed it down here and then just showed my line kind of going off the coordinate plane, which is fine because it extends forever anyway, right? So there we go. Hopefully you have your undefined point at -7, -11 as well, and a slope of 2 and a y-intercept of 0, 3. All right. Thanks for your hard work today. Make sure you do your extra practice, get that submitted, and then go over it with me before you leave class. I'll see you in a little bit.